What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the Sixers Digest YouTube channel. My name is Barnard, as always, and we have some more clarity from inside the Sixers building regarding the status of James Harden and his outlook from the team from here. This time we have some news from the Pat Bev podcast with Roan over at Barstool Sports. Pat Bev expressed kind of his experience with James Harden so far in training camp, what's been made up of the media, and a couple other notable points. I do recommend that podcast to a major extent, so make sure you guys tune in for the full episode there if you want to get a more breakdown. But I want to take the biggest piece of content and jump in and dive in and get my thoughts on what Pat said here. But before I dive fully into it, I do want to make sure that you guys are all hitting that subscribe button right here on Sixers Digest. At this point in time, 87.8% of you guys watching these videos have not hit that subscribe button yet. We have a ton of big plans for the Sixers season coming up. The time is now. Preseason is upon us, so we have no time to wait. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, ringing that bell, and keeping up with all the content we have here. Now, as far as the first thing that I want to lead off with, I'm going to give you Pat's thoughts on the situation. Didn't want to play the video because of some copyright issues and didn't want to step on any toes over at Barstool. But listen to the audio here, and then we're going to dive into things from there.
Obviously, it's you have the elephant in the room with the James Harden,
No denying that.
Yeah, but he was at training camp. He was great. He was in shape. He's been playing his ass off. He's been leading. He's been vocal. So it hasn't been a distraction there at all. Even what the media wants to present it to be like, he's coming here and he's just making everything tough. He's been a professional about everything and going about his business the right way. And it's good for players. I was happy to see him. So I know young players who guys never met him were stoked to see him. And he's been in practice.
He's a superstar.
Competing. Yeah. So it's been great. It's been real good.
So for starters, good to hear that Pat Bev is speaking positively of James Harden. We know that they're a pair of guys who have a relationship dating back to their time in Houston together. I like the comment about leadership, about him being in shape. I think these are all noteworthy points. And I just want to say I'm just straight up confused on the James Harden just situation as a whole. I'm really not sure what the game plan is here from either side of things. And I'll dive into everything, touch on a little bit of at the start. But the reason that I want to frame it is why it's so weird is because, for starters, we know how the NBA works. When you come to training camp, you're expected to work. You're then expected to prepare for the season and play. That is not quite the track that James Harden seems to be on because of this desire to be traded. That is where he has his heels dug in and has his desire. And why I'm especially surprised that things seem all good and dandy inside the Sixers organization is because we were prefaced so heavily with this news that James Harden was basically going to be a pain the second that he showed up. I mean, to pull up this Woj report here, this is right before that Harden arrived at training camp. And this from ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski said, quote, he wants to make the 76ers uncomfortable. So uncomfortable, ultimately, they don't think they'll get the best out of him and that they'll make a trade. The Sixers, on the other hand, they want to wait this out and hope they can get the best James Harden, the best version of him sooner than later. But the Sixers' stance has been all along, there's not a deal out there right now that gets us back the kind of assets we need to improve this team. So I understand that conceptually from the Daryl Morey standpoint of making sure you want to get value for James Harden. Where I'm confused on is what is the plan now that he is here? For Harden, it's very clear that he is taking the mindset of the best way to get me traded is to come in, take care of business, and basically play the game of making me look like an appealing trade target. It is not going to increase the market for James Harden by him causing a whole scene, being overweight, not showing up, not trying. We've seen him do this before, and that while that has accelerated the trade process from James Harden's perspective, it's not going to make Daryl Morey change his mind and see this value. And Morey is so zeroed in on this idea of cap space by getting to the offseason that James Harden is on a one-year deal. Morey is not afraid to just call his bluff, see him out this season, and then take that $35 million off the books heading into the next offseason. That we're looking at that cap space, we can find a player in free agency to replace him. That is very much on Daryl Morey's mind, which is why James Harden is kind of the mindset of, all right, let me take care of business, do my thing. But what happens from here? What if there is no market? And what is holding it back? For starters, I think it's important to note that when there are these quotes and these reports coming out, they're always released with a purpose. That these things are coming out from one side of things or the other, whether to increase the trade market for James Harden, whether it be to accelerate things, to make Daryl Morey look good. Let's give an example of right here, the rumored trade package. This is from Shams Charania of The Athletic. The reported offer from the Clippers for James Harden is one unprotected first-round pick, a pick swap, and salaries. The salaries that are in question would be somewhere along the lines of either Marcus Morris, Robert Covington or Nicholas Batum. None of those are the most appealing assets, but useful players nonetheless. Guys that would be effective rotation pieces for these Sixers. The bottom line is you can look at Daryl Morey honestly and think that's not a package that moves the meter for a James Harden deal. I get that. I understand valuing James Harden significantly more than this. But that's why the context of all this comes into play. That the Clippers are sitting here saying, we're bidding against ourselves. You don't even have another legitimate offer from a team across the NBA. Why would we increase our offer when we have the best option for you right now? That's what the Clippers are thinking. And that is fair from their perspective, that until another team gets in the mix, whether it be a Miami Heat or another mystery team sticking their nose in and putting a legitimate offer to push the market for James Harden, we're at this stalemate between things. But for Harden specifically, where do things go from here? Because whether or not he's on the team, the Sixers have a season this year. They have to prepare to play basketball. I'm recording this before the second preseason game. James Harden will be held out of preseason once again tonight, so we will not see him. That's not a surprise and not a big deal whatsoever. Even if he was planning a full season, it wouldn't shock me if he was sitting out of the preseason. But the bottom line is that regular season start date is not moving. So there either has to be a deal done, a compromise met, an agreement put in place, something to get these two sides on the same thing, because I don't think James Harden is the type of guy to just let the water run under the bridge here. It's very clear that he feels incredibly wronged in this situation, and there are plenty of people that think this way. In fact, later in the same podcast with Pat Beverley, they were joined by Michael Rubin, who of course is the Fanatic CEO, a former partial owner of the Sixers, and they asked him about the Harden situation. And I thought this was cool here from Rubin's perspective. He was asked how he would handle that, and Michael Rubin replied, it wouldn't have happened if he was still the part over the team is. The thing is, it's breaking my heart. Now, Rubin's a guy who also has a very strong relationship with Harden. He went on to give a whole speech about how winning is the only important thing to James, that I've seen how much he sacrificed for a championship. I know the work ethic he has on a basketball court. Very pro James Harden guy. That's a part of the main reason that he arrived in Philadelphia at the first place. That Michael Rubin was a guy pulling these strings, having these relationships. This connects to his relationship with Lil Baby and Meek Mill and a number of other key figures just across the celebrity industry. That is why him and James Harden are friends. I do think it is partially true that Michael Rubin would have been a positive factor in not allowing this relationship to get so jaded in the way that it currently is, the way that these two sides seem to be at each other's neck. And frankly, I think a lot of this could have just been undercomplicated if there was a simple phone call. Like if, from James Harden's perspective, he believes, and he is honestly right to read between the lines and believe this, that the Sixers' game plan was to allow the dead period to pass by. The Sixers are sticking to the stories. They did not want to get caught tampering again, even though by letter of the law, because James Harden was still their player, a Sixers player, they were free to talk to him. But the Sixers wanted to be extra careful because of the fining and punishment that they received last offseason for the tampering for PJ Tucker, for Daniel House. So they wanted to let this period pass by. That would force James Harden to make his decision, allow his player option to expire, and then he would hit the free agent market. There would not be that many teams interested, and the Sixers could get him at a cheaper deal. I think that's what James Harden believes the situation was. I think there's a real chance that was what the situation was. And James Harden decided, let me lock it in for $35 million this year. That's the most guaranteed money that I'm likely going to take, and we'll figure things out from here. I will request a trade. I will try and get to a more long-term destination, on and on and on. If Daryl Morey had simply reached out and said, look, James, I want you back. We're figuring things out. We're coming with an offer. We're waiting till this period of time extends because of the tampering thing, but we do want you as a Sixer, and I see you as a part of our long-term future. I think there's no issue here. I think we're heading into the second season with a ton of excitement because of Nick Nurse, because of these other pieces around, and because of the bigger picture idea of things. But that's not where we're at. We have James Harden refusing to play, still wanting to be traded, finally in the building, and seeming to be a good sport about it, seeming to be competing, being a leader, being the normal version you would hope to see of James Harden. But what happens from here? Is that going to last forever? Is things going to change? Are there enough guys that James Harden likes, respects, and is excited to play with that he changes his tune, that he's able to look to the side of the jaded and fractured relationship with Daryl Morey to purely focus on playing basketball with his guys? I hope so. I think that would likely be best case scenario for everyone. But based on his track record, based on what I know James Harden to be and how I know him to respond to situations, especially emotional situations, does that feel like a safe bet? Not really. So what does happen from here? What is the plan? And if you ask Nick Nurse, the Sixers don't seem to be sure either. They asked him about if he's playing tomorrow. This was back to the preseason question, and Nurse's quote was, we're just kind of taking it day by day with this. Also, shout out to Sam DiGiovanni of Clutch Points, kind of photobombing that picture there. Awesome dude, and make sure you read his written work as well. But the bottom line is the Sixers don't seem to have their ironed out plan either. What happens from here is the biggest question. And the biggest thing that I keep circling back to with James Harden and the issue with this is things can change so quickly. If Harden hits this point in his mind where he's frustrated, the trade talks aren't accelerating at the rate that he wants, he's not happy with the response, kind of just letting things drift along, and he decides to start causing a storm, start kicking things up, then all of a sudden this type of offer is something that may not even be on the table. And then all of a sudden the value of him continues to decrease and erode as there's no other teams outside of the Clippers that are already interested. And if the Clippers are watching him cause a hissy fit, they're not going to throw a premium price tag at him. So for now, I guess my point being that I just want these Sixers to create a plan. Look James Harden in the eye. Tell him how badly you want him to be a part of this franchise. If it's not that much, let him know. Say, look, I understand you're upset. We're working to find a deal. That's what we want to. We're going to find a trade to complete this roster better and get you in a destination. If what you truly want is to heal this relationship to James Harden to be a piece of this team next year, let him know that. Daryl Morey, call him in the eyes. Call him in the office. Look him in the eyes. Apologize a little bit. Say, I maybe managed things wrong, but I want you to be a part of this team. The best opportunity for us to win as a team and for you to win a ring is by doing this together. Let's put our pride aside. Let's put our past differences aside, and let's do this thing this year. Whatever that is, that's what I want to see from the Sixers. Get people on the same page. Get James Harden understanding the outlook from here. Do some damage control before it happens and allowing this to blow up in a bigger situation than it already is. This still can be saved. The situation is not over, but I just want these Sixers to have a plan, man. From here, we will see what happens. It is overall good news that Pat Bev is speaking highly of James Harden within the facility, that he is not being a distraction, that all these things he is acting like the player you would hope for him to be. So this is good news as a whole, but I'm just a little concerned about things moving forward. Overall, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button once again. Drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on James Harden, how much this situation has changed. Don't forget to hit that subscribe, ring that bell to keep out on all the content moving forward. I want to be back with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.